Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Rhonda and this is a little bit of everything Homestead if you're new here. I am redoing the introduction to this video because when I was uploading it to my computer, I accidentally deleted it. So in this video, Scott and I are upplanting some of the little seedlings that we have in these two little greenhouses we have in the house. They are about 4 to 6 weeks old. They were starting to get a little leggy and some of the leaves were starting to turn yellow. So they just need a little bit of extra care. So I hope you enjoy the video and we'll see you next time.
So what I've done is I wanted to kind of point out when you look at the tray here, and we organize it so you can see them all together. A significant number of seeds didn't grow, and that's not this many is common, but the majority of the seeds that really didn't grow were the kohlrabi. So I must have grabbed an older pack of seeds, not realizing it when I planted it, and not one of those. But then there's a couple. There's a beef one, and there are some beef ones over here. Those are the tomatoes, and there's nothing that germinated there. And then I don't know what else was in there, but so there's a couple of random things, and that's normal. Like I said last time, not all seeds are viable, so you'll get that. So I will replant the kohlrabi after I'm done transplanting tonight, just because it's early enough yet. We can get those growing and get them in the garden yet this year. Yeah. So that's it. But I also wanted to point out, and I think Rhonda was looking at something earlier, that she was counting the seeds out, and all of a sudden she looked in there a little bit closer, and she saw one just starting to germinate. So there's a possibility.
Oh, do you want me to find it?
There's just I mean, if you can, that's great. But there's a possibility that they're still going to germinate. So I don't want to disrupt the ones unless I know, like, if it's all the seeds, I'll know that, because I don't want to transplant two things into the same pot. So for the kohlrabi, I'll plant seeds of the same type in the same pot, and I have to change the label up. So, but on these guys here,
I can't find it.
That's okay. It's just to show. I mean, it's just a great. I was like,
it was a tiny little. It was just starting to pop out of the soil.
Yeah. So this here, these are the bliss tomatoes, and there was 4 of them in here. But on all seeds or all plants, they're in the seed and they start to germinate. The the stem and the first leaves come out. These are the first leaves always. They're the first ones at the bottom. They're actually a different shape than their photosynthetic leaves. So these are called cotyledons, or sometimes they're called embryonic leaves. They're providing the first nutrients for the plant until it can start photosynthesizing. So the plant itself, the natural progression of things, will reabsorb almost all this. And you can already see they're starting to like curl up and change color. So it's plenty of time. They're not getting really any more. They're probably getting a little use out of them yet, but that's going to be a key point for when I'm transplanting them. So in the pot itself, what I want to do is these pots, if I go side by side here, I can plant them almost all the way to the bottom, right up to those cotyledons. And in this case, if they were going to go below the soil, I would take my shears and I would just clip them off and go. I don't like to leave any of the plant parts on the plant when I bury it below there, below the soil, just in case it starts rotting. It could damage the stem itself. But in this case, for the most part, and I'll take it one step at a time as I proceed through, but if they're above there, I'll leave them in place because they are serving a purpose. What I do like to do is when I'm breaking them off, you could, if you really have good dexterity and sharp little fingernails, you could probably pinch them off with like your thumb fingernail. But I got this handy dandy little shears, okay, and it works great for it gives a nice sharp cut. So if I want to trim anything else,
Well, let's do an example. Let's take one out and plant it.
Well, yes. Can I just say a couple more things quick?
Okay.
And then throughout the season, I have all different other size shears as well, and some bigger ones for different purposes. But I don't know, there could be a one size that fits off, but I find that like these fine little guys, you can really get in there to cut the parts off that you don't need to. So my first step is I'm going to take these the label out. Okay, I want to make sure I know what it is. I'm going to set it right in front of me because I can't tell you how many times I've done it. And then I'll just kind of tap it a little bit. I'll just gently squeeze it, tug until it pops out.
Oh, show them the roots.
Yeah, so there's a significant amount of roots on here. You can see them on there. They're doing quite well. Throughout the whole seed core there, and it's not super massive yet. They're already coming down the bottom down here, so they're pretty much ready. And what I like about tomatoes is that no matter how much root or stem you put below the ground, that whole stem is going to add roots onto there. So the more the merrier when you need to water the plants and stuff like that. Now again, so what I'm gonna do is I'll just have a cutting board. I have this is my garden knife. This is just a knife I picked up at, I think, St. Vinny's. Super cheap, like $2. And I put a little edge on it. And I'll just just gently cut those roots and pull it apart. What I wanna do is I'll pull it apart just very carefully by the top. So that way it stays pretty much intact without trying to break that stem. I'll just carefully set it down. These plants may get a little droopy the first day or so after doing this. So again, I'm just going straight between the two little seeds there, and I'm just gonna cut straight down. So by doing that, I know that the roots are coming out all the way around the base of that stem there, so I'm not worried that I'm cutting some of the roots, because they will, oops, that's my crop. I'm doing too many things at once here. So I'm just separating them out. Again, trying to minimize how much aggressiveness I have. Now these two are right tight to each other. If I was worried and I didn't have too many plants, I would consider cutting one of these off and either possibly throwing a tomato in water, because they'll root very quickly. But again, I'm just gonna try to close the gap here and just get as much as I possibly can for both of those. Oops, let me pull it all apart. This guy's good. This is the weak one of the bunch right here. It popped off on me. So I got 3 solid ones with, even this one has a good chunk of little roots on there. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that in the background there.
This one might work though. It's still got, look at all the roots on there.
Yeah, so they're all gonna work pretty good, or pretty decent. So my next step then, okay, is to take these guys and set them right in the bottom of the pot. Try to get them somewhat in the center. And then just very carefully, I got my handy dandy little trowel. I just fill in 1/2 the pot,
I love the way the tomatoes smell.
And then I have it filled up. I'll pack it down a little bit, but what I want to do now is I'm going to get a little pressure on there. You can see how it slid over to so here's the center. The plant slid over this way by pushing it down. I'm going to go on the bottom, all the way down where the roots are, pull it back. Okay, so that I'm compacting the soil a little tiny bit. It pulls it back to center. I just take my little guy there and fill in the other half. Scoop. Or what did I say? Scoop. My little scoop and throw it in there. Yeah. So I'm going to pack it down a little bit. Now, what I don't want to do with this is I'm not going to, well, I usually could. I'll fill it right up to the top. Sometimes I'll leave it because the cotyledons are so high up on this one, or not all of them. They grew really well in that little greenhouse. They liked it a lot. So, and that's it. So then I'm going to take my little bliss tags. I got a billion of them here, and throw one in there. And then I'll get a tray and put it in there and start the whole process. So that's going to do a couple of things for this plant. It's going to make it more rigid, so it's not going to be so leggy or long, tall. So it's going to be more solid. In fact, when we go to plant, want to grab that for me again? When we go to plant these in the ground, these are going to be another 6 to 8 inches taller, and we're going to start putting these outside during the day now. And that natural wind will help stiffen them up, get them a little bit more rigid. They're not super flimsy right now, but they are a little on the flimsier side. So what will happen is when I put them in the ground, I will actually trim up a bunch of the leaves and put that bury it from here all the way up, another 6 or 8 inches into the ground. And that really will give them a lot of great leg room to grow. But then the process just continues as we go through the whole thing. Throw some in there.
I got it. And we're just going to keep going on like this. Just keep up potting them.
I'll get you one here in a second. Sorry about that. There, you can finish that one off. So I will show you, just because a lot of these are tomatoes in this bunch, I'm just looking for my little cauliflower tags. I know I got them, they're right here. So then what I'll do is I'll just show you what I'll do for the cauliflower. Similar process. Again, I'll just for these one, again, I'll pop them out. And even these guys are looking really good. You can see, the roots. There's not a ton in there by any means, but it's a solid amount. And you can see where the seed must have fell down the edge there on this guy. So what I'm going to do with this one is I just I'm not going to use my knife, but I'll see if I can just grab the soil a little bit right around the base of this root and just kind of gently pull, because there's not a ton in there. That way I can preserve this other seed a little tiny bit. So I'm gonna use my thumb to hold that middle seed in there and just kind of pull this one right away. Okay, so this one came out real nice. So I didn't, so I'd be able to save those other two there. So what you want to do, again, you're gonna put this in the bottom. So with this one, because it's down a little bit further, what you want to do, let me get this in here, hold this little guy, is I'll plant it down there, but I'm only gonna put soil right up to the leaves there temporarily. And then I can come back later if I need to put a little bit more soil over the top, we can do it at that time. But you want to plant these down as far as you can. So, and you can use the pots. You can come back later and fill more soil in if, you know, as it grows a little bit more. But if you plant them, if you put soil right away in the bottom, and they'll do fine by planting them in the ground like this a little bit further. I've never had an issue. You know, there's probably someone out there says, "Oh my gosh, you're not supposed to do that," or something. But I don't know. I've replanted a lot of plants like this, and they seem to do really, really well. It's just this first step you got to just kind of be careful with, you know, as you put them in there, and they'll grow just beautiful.
Is that too much?
No, just pack it down a little bit. Don't be afraid to, because it's just going to settle anyway when you get away. So she was just asking me about how much soil was in there, and I said, don't be afraid to pack it down a little bit, because as soon as you start putting water in there, it settles it right down. So I'm not cranking it like I'm making a sandcastle, but I'm definitely, you know, packing it down so it's firm and doesn't go in. This is that one that's really gentle, so be careful on that guy. So there's a couple differences. And see, look at this one. You can see on the cotyledons on this one. So if someone didn't know what they were, you can see that they're basically dead and they're ready to fall off. So at this point, I would even take my little clippers, you know, and just clip them off my plant. Oh, as best I can. It's hard to do while you're standing here. So that way, so it doesn't even need those anymore. Okay, so they weren't being any useful. It used all of its energy from them, and they were just wilting off and going to die off the plant anyway. So here's your plant. So now this one we can go right up to. Essentially, there's a transition in color here, right by where those cotyledons were, and you can plant all the way up to that point there. And they do pretty good. And you can see this one here if you want to show it. Here's another one you can have. So this little guy, the leaf is starting to turn yellow already. So this is probably only got like 2 more days, and that little cotyledon will die. And then what we'll do is we'll transition all these so they're facing away from the south window, and they'll straighten right up and they'll do great. The first day or so, we'll saturate these with quite a bit of water because they're going to be thirsty, and they may get wilty and they may drop right over, but give them a couple of days and they'll perk right back up, quite nicely. So they're really strong, solid looking plants. And I was looking at these guys here. These are an heirloom tomato that we planted. They're called Cherokee Purple. And they're like the size of the stem on these are solid little plants. And these guys might actually, with the cotyledons, might be buried when we plant these next. But they're definitely great little plants to plant. They're a fun tomato.
I need a stick.
Oh, sure, that would help. I think I got the Cherokees done too. I think it got disorganized when I bumped them earlier, but oh, there's only 2 of them. That's why. Okay. But just giving a little tap and a little tug, they pop right out. And again, the roots. Now, I don't know if you can see this on here.
Stick.
What is that?
It's a cauliflower.
I got one more cauliflower. I don't know if you can see this. I'll try pointing it out on this one here, and maybe Rhonda can zoom in later. But you can see here, I'll just where I'm pointing with a knife. The roots are way above the soil even. So as you plant these deeper, all roots will grow all along the stem here, and just kind of that pottle. When we end up when it's time to put them in the garden, they can. So this guy too, I'm going to grab this. This is how it's growing. It makes more sense to just use my fingers to just gently pry it apart, because they're just separated real nice. That first one was like a big ball, so I had wanted to cut it. But both these other ones, they separate out real nicely. And you can see I didn't really even tear any of the roots with any of those. So that's kind of the general process of what we're going to do. we're gonna just keep going through and did I give you a stick for that? Oh, there it is. Put them both in that one. We're gonna go through and do the rest of this little tray here, which won't take too much longer, and then we'll go through the other plants that are large enough to grow. And then when that's done, like I said earlier, I will go through and replant the kohlrabis and a few of the other ones. Peppers, peppers are a finicky little plant. Sometimes I've had them where they germinate right away. In fact, we had some germinate within 2 or 3 days. And then other times it's taken like a month. And I have them on warming trays. I've soaked them. I've done all the right things. And, if I were to be honest, I struggle with my peppers. I've had them sprout and grown plenty of them over the years, but man, it's just, they don't always grow for me. And I don't know if it's because I don't have a true greenhouse or I'm not a pepper person. I don't know. So this one I can pull off pretty easily based off where I can see the roots. Again, I'm just kind of trying to keep it intact. I don't know if you saw my little technique there. It's pretty specific in how you do that. But this one I think I got to cut apart because they're too close together. So I'll just kind of lay it down. Just kind of stick my little knife right in between there. Pull it apart and go. So as I was going through the pots here, here's one that I was just talking about earlier. So if you look, this big giant stem one, these are all the same tomato. This is a cherry tomato. This one probably germinated first by the size of the stem. Then probably about 4 or 5 days later, this guy germinated because it's about half the size. And probably about a week and a half, this little skinny guy germinated. And then just probably yesterday or today, all in the same pot, this little guy germinated right there. So 4 seeds, same pot, all at different times. So it just shows that don't give up on your seeds after you germinate them, because they can come up surprisingly late. They just didn't get enough moisture or something. But when they finally did, they come to life and they do germinate. So we have a couple last things that we're gonna pot, and marigolds is one of those. I like to plant the marigolds in the garden for obviously the flower. Yeah, it's a little pop of color, but marigolds are great for keeping nematodes away. So, and a couple of, I think, other insects, but nematodes is the main one.
Look at the color on those stems. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. What kind is it? Is it just a regular marigold?
These are the Jolly Jester variety. I think there's 2 or 3 different varieties that I planted. Again, just have different colors.
Okay. So you were saying something about nematodes.
Yeah, so nematodes is an organism that lives in the soil, and these kind of ward them off a little bit. So we'll plant these all over the garden. And I'll plant just some seeds as well in the garden, and they'll be a little bit later germinating, but then they'll have flowers throughout the entire season. And these will be big, giant plants, and we'll have smaller ones. So
yeah. And marigolds are good companion plants to tomatoes and stuff like that, right?
A little bit, but I'd say more of the basil is really good companion plants. Again, it's some insect controls, and they just like to grow well along with like peppers, tomatoes, things like that. The basil I'll plant more as a little clump. I don't necessarily separate those out as individual plants because they grow pretty easily, and they're pretty aggressive. So we'll have enough basil planted throughout the garden that we don't eat that much of it, but again, it grows really well with other plants. They're stuck in there. The roots must be pretty good on this. They don't want to come out. Mm-hmm. Oops, I squeezed it too hard. It's an older pot. Yeah, look at the roots in that sucker.
Oh,
these
look at that.
These were actually planted after all the tomatoes and stuff like that, like 4 or 5 days later. So yeah.
Ooh, be careful pulling those apart.
Right, these guys are definitely gonna take a minute. I might have to cut these. I mean, I probably could just rip them apart, but like I got the knife and and you know, I was thinking about this too. I'm like, I don't know if this is doing any better, but to me, it kind of saves some of the integrity of the root. Because I know ripping it apart, I feel is just a little bit more aggressive. Sometimes if I pull gently, as I'm tugging on it, if I feel it coming apart, I just keep pulling. But if I like this, it's like solid. Like it's just they're all the leaves.
Wow, that means they're healthy though, right?
Super, yeah, they're doing really well. If you've ever tried, marigolds are like the staple of easy plants to plant.
Yeah.
You can collect the seeds and replant them, and they just do super well. Even just throw seeds in the garden, they'll do super well. But yeah, so these will be a great addition, and they're a nice little flower. I like them. They're a pretty plant. You know, it's got a different texture of a leaf and color, and you know
Are they edible?
Great question. I don't know. I
don't know either.
You know, I know like nasturtiums and things like that are, but
I
have no idea on these. That would be a good question to answer because I do plant a lot of them. So you'd think that maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if they are or not. We'll have to Google that.
Yeah, so, you know.
If somebody knows, leave me a comment.
They look like they might be edible. They remind me of like a Swiss chard with the bright colored leaves. But they do say red is poisonous in in nature. It's the warning sign.
Oh boy, maybe not then.
I don't know. I just threw that out there. So I guess we're not a room there.
All right, we're just gonna up pot these little marigolds. And I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I have just a couple more of the bigger tomatoes and basils here. Not much longer to go. And then I'm just gonna replant those seeds to see if I can get them to go. I'm gonna grab some. I had bought some fresh seeds, but I thought I could get away. Lesson learned. You know, not all plants, but which is interesting too. I planted, it's this guy here, these guys here. These are heirloom tomatoes. They're called Mexican midgets. They're tiny little heirloom cherry tomatoes. And these seeds I collected from the plant itself in 2009. And I'm like, well, I couldn't find any fresh ones. I'll just throw them in there. And pretty much every single seed I planted from that, you know, how long ago is it? That's what, 15 years almost. They all grew.
Shut up.
You know, yeah, no, they're proof from the puddings right here.
Wow, I didn't realize they were that old.
Yeah, in fact, what I did with one of them was so leggy, I actually kind of wrapped it around in like a circle under the soil because I just had so much extra stem, so it wasn't so kind of flimsy at the top. But yeah, it was like, I was even doubting it, like, boy, that's a long time. Because about every other year or so, on all the, like the Cherokee Purple, the Mexican midgets, the heirlooms, I'll save some of those seeds and then, you know, replant them so I don't have to buy them again. And yeah, so I just, like the first package of seeds I came across was from 2009. So
wow.
There they are, growing just fine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was super cool when I came across. I was like, these are never going to germinate, you know, for being so old, but no, it just shows you how hardy some seeds are.
Wow.
And why you should. One of the advantages of using heirloom seeds is for that purpose, is that you can reuse them.
Sure.
And, you know, if you're worried about the state of the world, you know, if you were worried about having seeds for the next year, this is one way you could easily harvest them and save them.
Good point. Well, you guys, we're just going to continue to up pot these marigolds and do some basil, and then we'll probably plant some new kohlrabi seeds. Thanks for hanging out with us as we did this project. I'm sure everybody is doing this. If you're a seed starter, you know this chore. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for hanging out with us. I hope the sun is shining where you are. I hope your seeds are growing and your plants are happy, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, friends.
Bye.